Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Planetos Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the fans of George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire and HBO's A Game of Thrones. Spoiler warning, the show will cover all material, the books, the novellas, the histories, quotes and interviews by George and the showrunners, and all the episodes of the show and its commentaries and bonus materials. I'm one of your hosts, Brett. You can find me on Twitter at HomelyPillow.
And I'm your other host, Travis. You can find me at Sear_Travis on Twitter. You can follow our podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Planetos Podcast. And you can listen to our program on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Podbean, SoundCloud, Google Play, and other platforms. We hope you enjoy today's show. All right. That was, in my opinion, a phenomenal episode of Game of Thrones.
Yes.
And we're going to talk at length tonight about it. We don't yet know the title. Perhaps it's brewing in the fandom right now. We'll find out as we record, just like we did last week's. But it is episode 2 of season 8, and we have only 4 episodes to go. Now, to be clear to everyone out there, we are not discussing any potential leaks, rumors, filming details, spoilers, or any of that. That's not how we roll here. We don't want to sully ourselves. We want to go into these shows and into these podcast episodes unsullied and trying to remain honorable to our word, not to focus on that, because like you, we're fans. We're here podcasting about it, and we want to enjoy this show. So we're not going to talk about any of those things. We're going to talk about speculation, sure, where things might be heading. But we got a lot to talk about this episode, which I'm really dying to get into, and I know you guys are. But first, we want to welcome Ashley Schlafly. Did I pronounce that right, Ashley?
You did. Very nicely done.
Great. Thank you. So Ashley has been a friend and a follower on Twitter of the podcast. We wanted to get you on the podcast here tonight to help us break down this episode. But go ahead and introduce yourself. We want to welcome you to Planetos. Tell the fans out there where they can follow you and where they can listen to you in the podcasting world.
Sure. So again, my name is Ashley Schlafly. I am one of the co-hosts on the Dana Buckler Show, and we cover movies and analysis of movies that are coming out today, as well as we really like to focus a lot on like the and reminding people about how great film was back then, as well as also looking at different series. Right now, we're in the midst of a really long 8-part vampire series. But in my spare time, I am a huge Throne head. I have been a huge fan of the series from the books and the novellas that I read long before HBO had purchased the rights to the show, and then from day one watching the show on HBO. So I was really excited that you guys asked me to be on, and I'm still incredibly emotional from this episode and ready to have a therapy session with you guys to break it down.
Well, first of all, we want to give a shout out to the Shat on TV podcast, because Ashley, that's where you and I connected through their coverage of, I think, Westworld. Mm-hmm. And I know you're a huge fan of Westworld, and I'm sure at some point toward the end, we'll get to know you a little more. We do a segment on our podcast called Your Song of Ice and Fire. That's where we interview the fans, and we'll get to that at the end. But let's get into this. Let's back up. Let's talk about the credit sequence real quick, because we missed something last week. I think we were so enamored that we got this new credit sequence that we missed some minor details that I thought were really interesting. So everyone knows that the famous astrolabe starts the credit sequence of Game of Thrones, and that has changed as well this year. So from season 1 to season 7, the astrolabe told a story that predated what we have seen in Game of Thrones and what we know from A Song of Ice and Fire. And so on the little bands that spin around the astrolabe, they told the story of the doom of Valyria, the forging of the 7 kingdoms by Aegon and his sister wives, and then Robert's rebellion and the fall of House Targaryen and the establishment of the Baratheon dynasty. The new credit sequence, the new astrolabe in the credit sequence, tells 3 new stories. First, we get to see the Night King atop Viserion breaking the wall at Eastwatch by the Sea. The second thing we get to see is the Red Wedding, and that's represented by a lion with a trout in its mouth, obviously symbolizing the Lannisters crushing the Tullys. We have a flayed man holding a wolf's head, obviously the Boltons in their betrayal of the Starks. And then we have a wolf's body strung up on the twins, obviously the fact that the Freys, who thank God are all dead, or at least the male line is. And then finally, we get the birth of Daenerys's dragons, and those are represented by one large dragon and three smaller dragons, with the red comet above them, which, as book readers and fans know, is a herald. A lot of the characters interpret them meaning different things in the show and in the books. But I think a lot of people come around to the fact that it means dragons have returned. So that's just something really interesting that we wanted to go back and talk about. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that before we get started to the meat of the episode.
You know, I when I was watching it tonight, because I mean, that's immediately what I thought last week was the representation of dragons coming into this world, but also could represent the return of Azor Ahai, the prince who was promised. And now that Jon knows who he is and declared his name this episode, I'm curious to see how that gets unpacked, coming up, because maybe the red comet's representing that. But no matter what, I think it's fascinating. And I wonder if they're going to change. Maybe the Battle of Winterfell will be on the rings after next week. So.
Yeah,
that'd be actually really cool. One thing too that came out recently too is George made some comments about the ending is going to resemble a Dream of Springs ending, which I thought was really interesting because I knew there'd be similarities, but he's also said characters that are dead on the show are never going to die in the book. So those are probably going to be minor characters, side characters. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I just thought that was super interesting.
It's definitely very interesting. And I think a lot of there's a lot of frustration by that. There's also, I think, a lot of people who are happy that the two will sort of merge. And I heard it described like this. I think Brett and I have talked about this in the past. I think with Vanessa, maybe the episode she was on. But it's like starting off at the same location in two separate cars, and you're trying to get to the same destination, but you have different journeys along the way. You have different experiences, all of that.
Oh, that was with Vanessa Cole. That was over a Twitter.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Twitter, Facebook thing.
But actually the History of Westeros, their book to show episode this week with Lady Gwyn, they kind of talked about that in that kind of metaphor. So I think that's all great. I'm really looking forward to, however many years down the road, comparing the two and seeing all of what's alike and what's different, because the journey is different, and that's part of what is really important about A Song of Ice and Fire. It's the journey. It's not just the ending; it's the journey.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad that it's going to be similar because as patient as I am, I still want to know the ending, and I'm still going to go back and I still really enjoyed the books because I watched the TV show up until season 6, read all the books right before season 7 came out, or listened to the books, and it was still I still was very interested in it. I wasn't personally frustrated with that. I'm really not one of those people that get frustrated by spoilers unless it's like a super big twist. But even still, if I get spoiled, I'm like, dang, that would have been cool to be surprised. But it just doesn't really bother me. But a lot of people are bothered. I think most people are. So, but
yeah.
But I'm just not that way. Yeah.
I almost think about them as two completely different experiences, though, because my experience watching the show has been totally different than my experience reading, because I've actually read through A Dance with Dragons, I think 3 times. I think I've read the series up to this point, two or three times. And the characters are so different by this point in A Dance with Dragons in so many ways, with additional characters, especially, the Daenerys and Tyrion storylines and all of that in the books that are so vastly different, that I'm kind of excited because in a way, getting Winds of Winter and getting, the rest of the series, it's almost going to kind of feel like a resurgence and a rebirth of something that I've loved for so long. So I'm kind of looking forward to them being similar, but I wouldn't be upset if they, diverged a little bit, because I think it's kind of it's almost like an alternate universe, right? So it's,
And it's cool because George is a gardener and he's not finished with these books. And I assume he's going to keep doing what he does. So it could change. I mean, so I'm not too worried about this ending in a way, and then knowing the fates of some people. And still, you're not really sure because he's a gardener. I mean, he might at the last minute think he was pretty set on that love triangle, before he finished Game of Thrones, and then he kind of
abandoned that and moved on.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be great. I mean, the positive thing is we get 2 separate versions, if you will, of this story, and that's a great thing. I mean, the show brought me to the books, so I'll always have a special place in my heart for the show. But the books are just so phenomenal, and I just can't wait to see how George ends it. So let's get into this. Let's talk about this episode. I've already said that I think it's a phenomenal episode of Game of Thrones. Ashley, what was your reaction to this episode?
I loved it. I'm very surprised because I was kind of perusing Twitter because I kind of have a core group of GOT fans, some of which are the Shat guys, and I was kind of looking like, okay, what did everybody think? And I was surprised that there's a very mixed initial reaction to this show, because a lot of people felt it was filler. But I think it's interesting because those same people who are saying it's filler are the same people who complained last season about all the jet packing where they moved too quickly, and now they're complaining this episode about it moving too slowly.
Right.
But overall, my initial thought is just this was the Double D's giving the characters and us a chance to say goodbye. This felt like,
oh, wow.
I mean, I will be shocked if we don't lose 50% of the main characters, maybe more of the secondary characters, like the tier 2s. Yeah. And that's what this whole episode felt like to me. It was almost a gift. That's how I viewed it. I viewed this whole episode as a gift, because it was our last night with these characters, their last night together, and us as a family, because this viewership is a family. All nerddom, all geekdom is a family. And this was our chance to say goodbye to people who've meant a lot to us.
Wow.
Yes. I love that. I can't say anything better than that.
Yeah. I mean, that perfectly encapsulates, I'm sitting there with my wife, who is a show only watcher. She knows what little I have told her. And obviously I've told her a lot about Stannis Baratheon, which she's like, what the fuck? But anyways,
Team Renly forever.
Duty was done.
What?
Team Renly forever.
We should have checked your credentials. No, I'm just kidding.
But are you trying to get thrown off the show?
The shortest podcasting guest appearance ever.
But I'm sitting there with her and I'm saying, oh, he's a goner. He's a goner. He's a goner. And Ashley, you're right. This is. I tweeted something out just right after the show ended that to me this was really the calm before the storm, but it was happy hour actually. I mean,
it really
these were such great moments for these characters, and I love what you said, Ashley, that they just took the time to stop. And we're going to get into it. There's a lot of information that's dropped here. There's a lot of reunions. There's a lot of things that really set up what's to come, but I think you perfectly captured how we should look at this episode. That this is the last night of these people together. Brett, what was your reaction?
There's a lot of reunions that I want to talk about. We'll probably go in order here, so I won't bring them up right here. But I did love it. I also think those people complaining about the time jumps and how this episode was filler are the same people who complain about bands, like rock bands and bands in general, staying either they remain the same and they release songs that sound exactly like everything else they've released, or bands that change too much. And then it's like, guys, pick one or the other, But no, I really loved it. It was a I don't think it was filler. I didn't.
No, I don't think so either. In fact, and we're going to talk about this as we move through, but this really reminded me of the episode Blackwater from season 2.
Yes.
And I think when we look at episode 2 of season 8 and episode 3 of season 8, it's going to be like Blackwater plus an extra hour of footage times 1,000. I think we're going to look at it like that because, in Blackwater, they really took the first 15 minutes to let the characters prepare. You had, Stannis and Davos sailing. You had Tyrion and Shay, the Hound and Bronn. You had all of these people waiting, again, the calm before the storm. Mm-hmm. And I think looking at episode 2 and 3 in that context really set, because I'm seeing a lot of people even say that this was better than Blackwater. And I don't think I'll go that far yet, but 2 and 3 together may eclipse that as some of the best, however it ends up being 2.5 hours of television, depending on what happens. So let's get right into it. Let's break down what happened. Let's talk about these scenes. Man, some phenomenal scenes. Let's start right where the episode starts. We pick up a few minutes after episode 1. If everyone will remember, episode 1 ends with Jaime arriving at Winterfell and turning around and Bran is staring him. Now we open with Jaime's trial, if we can call it that. Jaime in front of Daenerys and Jon and Sansa and all of the lords and ladies of the North and their Stark Targaryen alliance. And he's being questioned by Daenerys. He's being questioned about why he's there. Where's the Lannister army? All these things.
I liked how Sansa and Daenerys were agreeing on something.
Yes.
Like it was kind of almost squashed. Now the feud seems more. It didn't seem silly in the first place. I was just worried that it would seem silly. It doesn't seem silly now. So I'm super happy about that. Brienne standing, and I think everybody called that. I think people knew that was going to happen. I don't know. I really like that. It was really nice. It was a really nice touch to the episode.
I have to say, I think narratively, I think they made a very smart choice to fill in all those gaps for the other characters with Brienne, because they haven't known Jaime. They know Jaime as the Golden Lion, the really arrogant Kingslayer from the last time he was at Winterfell, and they don't know how he's been completely broken down and remade. And I really like that this show has darkened his hair, because it's almost like this physical representation of the fact that he's not a Lannister anymore. He resembles Tyrion a lot more now than he does Cersei. And I think that that's intentional. Jaime, we know him now, and they don't. And it was such a smart way. And just that one little clip with Brienne, they didn't need to know his story. They knew the 3 main highlights, and it was done. Yeah. And I also think it was a very important moment for Tyrion. Yes. I'll be honest with you. If I have anything negative to say about this episode, and it's not just this episode, but it's been recently, I am not enjoying the way that Tyrion is being broken down. I don't feel like it's true to his nature, his character, either in the books or in the show. I don't feel like he's earned this fool hat that they've put on him. And I'm glad to see throughout the rest of the episode, we got a little more classic Tyrion back, but he and Daenerys, their relationship is really frustrating. The way she treats him and the way he's been written really throughout last season and so far this season has been very frustrating to me. But I did think it was an important moment for him to get to defend his brother and to see them together again. That was a reunion I was really looking forward to. And I felt it paid off really, really well.
Yeah, I like what you said about the two of them physically resembling each other now, because I think that that sets them apart now from Cersei, just in a physical way. I obviously have to agree with you about Tyrion, and I've been very frustrated with Tyrion's arc since season 5. Well, I won't even throw season 5 on there. I mean, season 5, he's journeying. We can kind of dismiss some of that. Season 6 and 7, obviously, but I do think, and I think you said it just a little bit, Ashley, that we got a lot of great Tyrion moments in this episode, and I hope it's building him back up to be more confident, to be more involved, because he is smart. And I felt like that was kind of a wink and a nod from the showrunners and the writers that, everyone can make mistakes. Yes, we've been having Tyrion make a lot of mistakes, but he's still the Tyrion and love deep down inside. But we only have 4 episodes to go. That's not a lot for him to really recoup in my mind, but I did like these. I think they're setting him up for something this season. I'm not sure what, but they're setting him up for something.
I hope it's not a goodbye, like Ashley, that like you were saying, because they could build him up, because there was a lot of death talk.
Yeah, that's
just
right.
kind of
that's
like
true.
just so he was talking about dying, and who said. Someone said like, oh no, Bran was like, Bran said something about how do we know, like we don't know that there's anything afterwards or something. So that really worries me.
But I think there was a moment though that's supposed to be a clue to us, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, right? But he sat down with Bran, and it's implied that Bran tells him his story, and he and Bran had that very strange moment last episode where like he looked at him and Tyrion looked back, and it was the double D's don't do anything that's not on purpose. And I wonder if Bran has told him something that he now knows something about his import, because I know that you guys don't like to get into conjecture, so I'll just say from the preview, a lot of people, including myself, were surprised at how little Tyrion was in the season 8 trailers. There was tons of the Stark children, there was tons of secondary characters, but there wasn't of Tyrion, and I think they're doing that on purpose. I think that Tyrion has a greater purpose, and I think perhaps he just found out what that purpose is, because he's not nervous in that room. He's not like in Blackwater. I'll bring it back to what you were saying about the Battle of Blackwater. He was terrified before the Battle of Blackwater, and he almost had a calm about him, and I'm curious to see. I want to know what Bran told him by that creepy Bran told him by that fireplace, because I'm wondering if there's no way they're just going to let Tyrion go. I'm sorry. There's no way. No way.
I think you're kind of right too. I think he's got some more to do in King's Landing. And I think they're going to have more of Tyrion Cersei conflict. I don't know what's going to happen after episode 3. I mean, obviously they're going to have to flee Winterfell. It seems like they might defeat the Night King in episode 3, or have one of those intimate moments in episode 4, like kind of the big battle, then the smaller battle in episode 4, and then the next 2 are them coming down to King. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how it's going to end. I mean, all we know about is this one big battle. So,
and Ashley, feel free to speculate or conjecture on the episode. Let's just not share leaks or spoilers or anything that we think someone has confirmed in the fandom. But yeah, I think that Tyrion, there's going to be something with Tyrion, and I agree with you. Actually, I didn't. I mean, I know they talked, and while I was watching it, I thought, okay, what is Bran telling him? So now I'm hooked on that. Ashley, I want to know, did he tell Tyrion something? And will Tyrion do something because, look, I had to do this. Bran relayed this to me, and this is why we're doing this. Let's go ahead and transition. We're going to skip a couple scenes ahead. Let's go ahead and transition. Let's stay with Bran, and let's talk about his discussion with Jaime in the Godswood. I thought that was a very interesting scene It was great to have these two characters interacting, but the way it ended, the last line that that Bran says to Jaime is, "How do you know there is an afterword?" I thought that was so ominous.
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah, I don't know if, that's a general term. Bran's powers are so odd. We don't know if, like Melisandre, he misinterprets things or he knows everything. But if he knows everything, then there's a lot of question about why he wouldn't stop them from doing certain things. So I think it's somewhere in the middle where he's got this flood of information, but doesn't really know how to piece it together. I mean, we saw that in season 7 where he thought Jon was a sand, but Sam was there to be able to say, well, actually he's not. Do you think what he said to Jaime was specific to Jaime or specific to we're all going to die, or there's the potential for all of us to die?
It could be like one of those Doctor Strange moments. I saw a million different scenarios, and I mean I don't know, but
that's a good point.
But yeah, it could be like the Melisandre stuff. Although it doesn't really seem that way. It just seems like he doesn't. It just seems like it's like logging on to the web. You don't know where you're going till.
Right.
Someone gives you some information.
Yeah, you got to direct it, right. Yeah, I heard someone describe Bran like that. Like he's Google, but he needs a user to kind of push him like, well, I'm actually searching for this. Ashley, what do you think about that scene between Bran and Jaime?
I think it's so interesting that you bring up Doctor Strange because I literally have in my notes here Doctor Strange Bran. That's literally what I wrote down. And I think it's a data dump. I mean, that's what happened. It happened so quickly that the former three-eyed raven had to do a data dump with him, and he didn't have time to learn how to use what he was given. And so everything is a jumbled mess, and he I think he's getting better at it. I think he's figuring now. He knows the Night King is after him and why, and he knows what he wants and his intentionality. And I think that that's the case, but I don't think he's able, because of the mistake he made by going back and allowing the Night King to mark him. Right. He's now paying the price for that by having to sort through everything. And as far as Jaime goes, I very much think that was meant for Jaime specifically. I mean, I know we'll make predictions, but when I did my Game of Thrones pool, we have a death pool about who was going to survive and who wasn't. The first person I selected to die was Jaime, because for Jaime to remain in the world of George R.R. Martin, honor comes through legacy. The characters in the show and in the books, we don't know how important they are until they die. I mean, look at Ned Stark. Ned Stark is the most important person because of the legacy he left behind and his children and his honor and his nobility. And I think that for Jaime to truly complete his redemption arc, he's going to have to die. And I think it will be to save Tyrion or save Brienne. It's going to be something like that. But I think Jaime is dead after they spent so much time on him this episode. I think that Jaime is for sure gone. And so I really think that Bran, and I don't think he meant it in a rude way. I really don't believe he's, like he said, he's not angry at anyone. I don't think he said it in a malicious way, but I think it was very much well, how do you know that? Because you're human and your time is up.
Yeah. I did like how like Jaime, said he wouldn't apologize for anything, and then he ends up apologizing to Bran right after. I think everyone's been waiting for that. I thought it was really nice, though.
Yeah,
of course.
All right, let's transition. Let's talk about, we got a really big scene between Arya and Gendry. Let's talk about
one.
Let's talk about the first one first. Basically, make me my damn weapon, Gendry. I asked for this weapon. Where is it? And he's thinking, he's still thinking this is Ari, the orphan girl. Still, she thinks that she can take on rapers and all this, and this isn't what we're facing. And then she just basically hits 3 bullseyes in a row, and he's like, "Oh shit, what the hell is up with her?" And then obviously, when I realized they were going to have sex, I was like, "Man, this is going to be so weird." Because, like, back to your comment about being a book reader, I can differentiate. Like, I see some of the characters when I'm reading the books, I see them as their book character. When I'm watching the show, I see them as their character. But you still have that in the back of your mind, the age of some of these characters in the books and what's happening to them on screen. But I thought it was really well done, as best as a sex scene can be. I thought it was touching. It was, I don't know. You guys jump in here.
I mean, it was real.
It was real. Yeah,
I appreciated that there wasn't some swelling orchestra, Arya's losing her virginity. Like,
right.
It was this beautiful moment. It was real. It's 2 warriors, because that's what they are.
Yes.
It was 2 warriors who've always had this underlying sexual tension, that both come from noble families, albeit one being a bastard and one not. And they are sharing a really human connection, doing something that I think a lot of people would do the night before perhaps they die. And I thought it was spot on. And I mean, yeah, kind of awkward, right? Like, we've seen her grow up, but I mean, she's not a kid anymore.
Right.
So.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's what kind of really bothers me, is watching her grow up. I mean, granted, she is an adult. And like, I think it was just more of the age difference between actors, maybe, that was like kind of weird. I don't know. Like, I don't know fully how I feel about it, but I do like y'all's points on it.
Yeah.
Because it makes sense. It makes sense. Like, this is the last night. Let's get it on. Let's do things we haven't ever done before. I totally understand that. But at the same time, I don't know fully how I feel about that. And
go ahead, Ashley. No, go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, the only thing I was going to say is, one of the things that I think was smart about the way that they handled this is Arya has that great line, or set of lines, in the earlier scene where I know death. I know his many faces. And Arya is expert in death, but Arya hasn't had much life. She hasn't had much of what life offers, the beauty of life. She doesn't know any of that. And I thought it was it's probably the wrong word, but so innocent of her to say, I want to know what it's like before I meet my end. And I thought that right there was a really sad, when you said touching, for me, that's what was touching about it, was this is her being vulnerable and saying, I could kill you in 1,000 different ways, but I was a little girl when I watched my father die. I did all of these things to become a wielder of death and know a little bit about the lives that I'm defending. Right. And I thought that was great.
That's a perfect way you put it, because, not to be too personal here, but we all have experienced that first awkward moment of love and relationships. Arya doesn't get that. Even though this is a medieval setting, a fantasy setting, these are still real human beings. She jumps from an innocent little girl, kills a person to escape King's Landing, and her road gets very dark and very terrible for her. So I really like that sense that she wants to experience life. She's experienced death. We know that, as you said, Ashley. But she's quizzing Gendry, because she's basically saying, my first time's not going to be awkward. Be honest with me. Tell me.
I thought that part was funny, because it's like, how many girls have you slept with?
Right.
And he's like, I don't keep count.
Of course you do.
And she's basically just saying,
and she's playing the lying game with him.
She basically yes. Tell me the truth, because if I'm going to die tomorrow, I'm not going to go out with some awkward 15-year-old romance in the back of a car.
But I think this also means she's going to die too. I think that this was her this was the
Ooh.
gift to her and her character. I think that, and I love Arya. Arya is one of my always have in book and show, always one of my favorite characters. But I think that this combined with the previews and her running and how terrified she is. I think that Arya is she's gonna fall. One of the Starks has to fall, and it's not gonna be Sansa. It's not gonna be Jon. He's not gonna die this early in the season. I mean, it's just not gonna happen. HBO is not gonna let that happen. And
oh man, I think
she's gone.
That's going to be okay, because that's going to be crazy. One of my big theories for this is Arya's going to initiate Clegane Bowl, and Barrick's got to give his kiss of life to someone, because they took Lady Stoneheart out, and it's a big fan theory, like, or Arya has to kill her, but I think that the kiss of life has to pass somewhere.
But is the Lord of Light going to raise two? Well, no, because I mean, he's a Targaryen, but two people associated with the Stark house. I don't know. I mean, I would love that. I would love if Arya becomes the Lady Stoneheart of the show, because if anyone is, I mean, I hope she doesn't have her throat slit and she can't talk. I hope that's not the case. But I don't know. I think that Arya's running so terrified in the crypts, which for me means one of the whites, she knows that's what that means for me. Yeah. And I think that is going to be what brings her down, because that's the greatest insult of it, right? Like, it's the fact that if you fall, I mean, I love that line that Tormund has, where Tormund says, anyone that's not here is fighting for the Night King now. Right. And we're going to see that next episode. I think they're going to fall and they're going to get back up again. And that's the stakes here.
Yeah. And I hate to think this, but after the events of the episode and the events of Arya's events in this episode, I'm afraid she's running from Gendry. I think it's Hodor. Scared. You think it's Hodor?
I think it's Hodor.
Wow. Either one of those. Either one of the, I mean, there's a big, I mean, everyone's assuming the in the crypts it's warded or something. Bran took those swords. They took those swords off of the thing. Right. So I don't know if some of the ancestors are going to come out of the crypts. It could be that. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. A lot of people have talked about she's trying to lure some whites or the Night King or something away from Bran, because they kind of set up they're going to use him as bait. I think Theon's going down, as much as I hate it. Because
of course.
Because I feel like, I think Eliana from Girls Guide Canon or might have been Chloe, one of them were talking about, like, they kind of hope he survives to show, like, even if you're broken, you can still survive and move on, or not even maybe move on, but you're just broken, but you're existing. So I kind of wish he would live, but I think he's going down.
You mean Bran? You think Bran would live?
No, Theon. No. I think Theon's going down, but I would like it if he lived. Same with Jaime. I think he's going down, but I want him to live.
Yeah.
Oh, I adore Jaime and Theon. I mean, absolutely. But, I mean, I don't know if either of you guys are Harry Potter fans, but in the Harry Potter books and the Half-Blood Prince, there are these creatures called Inferi that are very similar to the White Walkers. Instead of being frozen, they live under this water in this cave. But there was a great fear that when people read the book for the first time, that Harry's parents were going to be, because it's people that Voldemort had killed, that Harry's parents were going to be down there, and how dark and disturbing that would be, for him. I mean, what a bigger, scary moment for a character than for that to happen. And I think it's very similar in this. I think that not just Arya, but many of them are going to have to face their friends and loved ones. And they have to, for the stakes to really work. I mean, I think it would be disingenuous for those moments not to happen. Yeah. And I just don't think, I think she likes Gendry, but I don't think she loves Gendry. I don't think she has enough of a relationship with him. I think it's got to be, I think it's going to be her mother, or it's going to be Hodor, it's going to be Rickon, it's going to be somebody that just messes, messes with her head.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like the idea that Barrick gives the kiss of life to someone to bring them back. I mean, I do like that, but I think you could also argue that Arya has already sort of adopted the Lady Stoneheart storyline in what she does in season 6 and early season 7 when she kills all the Freys.
Well, some people have said he's going to do that to the Hound. The Hound's going to die, and he's going to resurrect the Hound. Maybe, I like that a lot too.
I do too.
I just don't understand why if he's. I was of the opinion like Barrick's probably going to go out swinging so Tormund could get away, but that doesn't make sense. Like, why even include Barrick? He would have went out with Thoros last season. So I feel like Barrick is there for a reason. And he's gonna give the kiss of life. He does it in the books. He's gonna do it. He's gonna do it to someone. Because I mean, it's same thing with Lady Stoneheart. She's around. She's doing something. She's not there just to be a horrific figure. There's a story there. I just think he's around for a reason. He's going to do something important. He could potentially resurrect the Hound after Clegane Bowl. He could potentially resurrect someone during this next episode.
Right.
I'm banking on this next episode, but I'm not sure. Depending on if Arya survives, I think Barrick's going to survive. But if Arya dies this next episode, Barrick could potentially go dead or survive going forward. No, I don't know. I jumbled that.
See, but I think that's spot on though, because R'hllor, we don't know a ton about him. We know more about his followers than we do about the god himself. But I think that most of his apostles are people who are apostates themselves. Like, they don't believe in anything. John being raised from the dead, John really, I mean, he has the old gods of his family, but he's not an overtly pious man. And then you look at, Barrick as well. He's not an overtly pious man. He doesn't understand any of it. And maybe that's set up this week with he and the Hound, like reminding of that relationship. I think that you could be right. And I certainly don't want to jump ahead, but I think that you're spot on about Clegane Bowl, because I personally believe that next episode, the Night King will be defeated, and the rest of the series will be about taking whoever's going to take the Iron Throne and kill Cersei. And that's when I think Clegane Bowl will happen, because you can't have all of that going on with the Night King hanging out, right? Like, it's too much. And so I think that would be a very interesting plot line if something happens. Maybe the Hound loses Clegane Bowl and then he raises him. I mean, I don't know, something. And what great irony, right? But he winds up serving a god of fire when he's so terrified of it.
Yes. Absolutely. So,
yeah. I really love it.
All right, we've got a lot to get to, so let's keep this ball rolling. We've already brought him up, so let's go ahead and bring up the fact that Theon and the Ironborn have made it to Winterfell. I thought it was a really moving scene between him and Sansa, her hugging him. And then obviously in that montage at the end, we'll talk about that later. But we get to see them sharing a bowl of soup together. And I thought it's just a great little scene. Two great little scenes with Theon. I love Theon. I think he's a great character. He's done such terrible things, but he has grown so much, and I love that he and the Ironborn are going to defend Bran at the Godswood.
He's like that troubled child that went down like a terrible path and then overcame it and is trying to do better and doesn't really know how, but then it kind of comes around and figures it out, and it took him it didn't take him too long, because he's been through, what he's been through versus what he's done is just not, not justice that's been done to him. It's horrible.
Well, and I love the fact that they're setting this up for Theon to be in the Godswood because
I didn't think about that.
In a Dance with Dragons, right?
And,
A Dance with Dragons. In a Dance with Dragons, Bran begins to communicate through the Weirwoods to Theon, and the theory from Theon 1 in the Winds of Winter, the sample chapter, that Stannis is going to take Theon to execute him in front of the Godswood, and Bran is then basically going to speak to Stannis, which is going to be insane because, you know, Stannis Bradley and having a tree talking to him. But the fact that the show is now putting these two characters in the Godswood together, I think it's a great nod to what happens in the books and what potentially is going to happen in the future. Ashley, what did you think about Theon and the Ironborn coming to Winterfell and going to protect Bran?
I mean, I would second everything you guys said, but the one thing I would bring up is the most important part of that reunion scene. Well, it was very touching. I mean, it maybe one of the many times I got very teary-eyed this episode. But besides that, I think the most important part narratively from that scene is the change in language. Last episode, Yara says she assumes you want to go defend the queen at Winterfell, and he says yes, and he doesn't correct her. And here, when he's actually there, he doesn't respond to Dany. He looks at Sansa and says, I would like to defend Winterfell if that's okay, Lady Sansa. Yes. And that moment, that look that Dany gives, I think that we're building that. It's very obvious that all of these people, their loyalty, if there's going to be a woman they're loyal to, it's Lady Sansa. And that was a big, it was touching, but I think also in terms of the story, that was a really important scene because she's not going to forget that.
Oh God, I loved it. I mean, that was between that and the Jamie Brienne knighting scene, two favorite scenes of it, because that was just, I didn't expect the Theon Sansa thing to be so emotional, and it was great. And just like how he kind of just like, right, he's serving Dany, but he's asking, you know, he kind of, he wants to fight for the Starks. And I know some people don't like that he's fighting for the Starks. They want him to go out on his own terms. But I mean, he was raised with them.
But you know, in that moment, I was waiting for him to say, and I'm not upset that this wasn't said, but just in my mind, I was waiting for him to say, you know, Queen Daenerys, I'm a Stark. And even though he doesn't say that,
that's what he says.
It's basically what he says. I'm here to defend my brothers and sisters who are still alive.
My home.
I'm here to defend my home. This is where my father raised me, and that's so powerful. To think that Theon's come that far. I mean, I'm getting emotional right now, and this is one of like 5 or 6 scenes where I'm like you all, I teared up because it's so moving, and man, just great setup here, great scenes. Let's jump to Daenerys here because this scene has reminded me of something I was thinking about while I was watching the episode. She seems like such an outcast to these people. Or I guess she herself feels like an outcast because, like you said, Ashley, even in this scene, Theon turns and addresses Sansa. Now, he does it, I think, because that's, you know, he's looking at her as his sister and they share a home together and everything. But just the look on Dany's face throughout this episode and you know, we want to get to the final scene between her and Jon here in a little bit, but you know, I don't know how to describe it, and I don't know what they're doing yet with Daenerys this season. What do you think about some of that?
I don't know if you guys listen to the shot on TV coverage of
I do, yes,
on the throne. Well, I had called in with a voicemail last week because the King Bee had talked about how he feels. He's not a book reader. He's only a show watcher, and how he hates Daenerys' character. He thinks that she's really spoiled and entitled. And my brother is only a show watcher. My husband has only been a show watcher, and they all hate her. They hate her. And I think a lot of it, and what I was talking about on there is I think a lot of it is they have not done a good job at explaining how complex of a character she is, because she's someone who's been told her entire life that she deserves deference because of her name, because of her title. And she's pushing toward this Iron Throne that she has no concept of at all. Like she doesn't understand what the Iron Throne even is, other than a seat of power. And I think what you're beginning to see here, that I think will happen in the books if it goes this way, that Dany is beginning for the first time to see that deference she believes she deserves is being given to other people who've earned it. Sansa has earned deference. She has earned the respect of her people beyond just who her parents were. She's now earned it in her own right. And I think that when you see people who are willing to die for you, Grey Worm, Missandei, they feel that way about Dany because they've lived with her and they've she's earned their love and respect. And she's beginning to see that she's going to have to do that beyond just being a Targaryen. And I think that that's what we're beginning to unpack, because she is very spoiled and entitled in that way. And those walls are being torn down very quickly for her.
She's learning to don her floppy ears.
Yes. Yes, you're right. Yeah. And, I think us as fans, us as book readers and show watchers and folks involved in the fandom, we can say without a doubt that Dany has earned the respect of everyone, right? But from a character standpoint, these Northerners don't know who this woman is. They don't know that she freed people from bondage. Gosh, Ashley, I love that. I love the fact that Dany is a witness to what she would perceive as deference, but what she is only looking at from a superficial standpoint, that these people, it's not that she's Sansa Stark. It's not that he was Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, Jon Snow. It's that they fought and bled together and have become friends and have earned each other's respect. And that's really important. And I do think Dany will get there. And I don't want anyone listening to this podcast to think that we're criticizing.
No.
Think about it in the terms of how the characters view her. If you're told your whole life, I mean, look at Fire and Blood that just came out last year. Look at all these other histories. The Targaryens are taught that they are exceptional. They're above. That doesn't mean they're
only breathe
better.
With each other.
Right. Right. So we've got to understand a little bit of where Dany's coming from in that respect. And I don't know if you follow him on Twitter, Ashley, but poor Quentin, Emmett Booth, he hosts not a podcast with one of our friends, or he's our friend too. But anyways, he had this great, I think this past week, he had this great thread about the fact that Dany right now in season 7 and season 8 is the Stannis Baratheon of the show. Someone who, the throne is mine. I'm here to free you. Kneel to me. I'll set you free. I'll save the world, all this. But it's a cautionary tale. She's got to change her ways to get them to win. You just can't come in there and say, I'm the rightful queen. That doesn't work, especially in the North.
Well, I mean, and come on, she calls herself a breaker of chains, but to the Northerners, she's the bringer of chains, because they don't feel like they need to be unchained. They have been. They took the North back.
Yeah. I thought Sansa's conversation with her was very interesting in the fact that we rose up, we saved ourselves, we created a northern kingdom. We don't need you.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And it's kind of like when you're working for a company and you get a new manager or a new a new president of the company, and they come in and they start, or a new district manager or something, just a new leader, and they come in and they start making little changes, and like kind of demanding respect, but you don't know them, and like all the employees are there, like they're eye rolling, and until they get used to them, and then once you're settled in, you're like okay, but yeah, it's kind of like a command shift. So
let's stay on this. Sorry. Let's stay on this topic, but let's bring two scenes. One, we've got that scene between Daenerys and Jorah, where Jorah is basically saying you need to forgive Tyrion, and you also need to protect him.
I've never liked Jorah so much.
I know.
I do. I love Jorah.
I do too, but I loved him more than normal. In that scene.
Yeah. I thought that was a great scene between them. I thought the fact that he was honest with her, that you're going to need Tyrion. You're going to need Tyrion for what lies ahead. But let's transition also into the fact that Jorah does two things, right? He gets her to realize she needs to protect Tyrion. But he also basically tells her, you need to go and talk to Sansa Stark. And I thought their scene was really strong. I really liked it. I thought it was, a lot of people were frustrated with the Winterfell plot from last season, not necessarily with its end. And people were kind of going into this season, and even with last episode, worried that there was going to be this.
That was totally me. Yeah.
The cattiness between two women, Dany and Sansa. And I loved their conversation. I loved that it was so brutally honest. These two women have so much that they could really commiserate over. They've been through experiences. They've been sold off. They've been manipulated by men. They've been manipulated in this power structure, used. And right at the end, the Iron Throne comes back up and it separates them again. So let's talk a little bit about the scene with Jorah and the scene with Sansa from Dany's perspective.
Their talk so much reminded me of like, you can relate to someone and you can start connecting, and then politics comes in, and then just people shut down because politics is very divisive, and they were talking politics. Iron Throne is very political, I think they're heading towards a mutual understanding. I think that was just like the first of many talks that's going to happen. But it doesn't feel like last season. It feels a lot more important, a lot more natural, less petty, because it is a thing. Like people don't really, a lot of people don't really understand that, like, in the medieval ages, people needed to have a king to kind of throw out justice, to kind of in a fair way, because if one family seizes power, they might, like another noble, the rest of these families get jealous, and they think something's going to be unfair. So you do, in their world, they do need some sort of monarch. I think even if the kingdom's split up, I mean, they're still going to have a ruler. But it's very important. It's not.
Yeah, they're not.
I just want to be powerful. Right. That's not really.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a factor, but there's more to it than that. But
no, I agree. I think that, I mean, they definitely have lots of things in common. They're both noble women. They both come from incredibly powerful families. They both, like you said, were sold off. They both were raped. They both, I mean, I have a very complex relationship with his character, because he was such a, insidious character at first, and then he became better. But at first, I mean, he raped her. And, so they have a lot of trauma that they share, which I think is great. But I think again, it's that deference that she expects that Sansa doesn't give her. And I was a little confused, I'll be honest, by the scene, because, in episode 9 of season 6, when Yara and Theon show up, and Yara says, well, we want the Iron Islands. And Tyrion says to Daenerys, he says, well, what if all the other kingdoms ask the same question? And she says, well, they're welcome to ask.
Right.
And she accepts Yara in a way that she doesn't with Sansa, because Sansa's saying the same thing that Yara's saying, right? The same thing that she brings her when she shows up in Marine. And I think there's a reason for that. And I think it's because Daenerys was not threatened by Yara. And I think she's very threatened by Sansa, because Sansa is a powerful leader. She's a powerful negotiator. She runs a house. I mean, Daenerys, I don't think ever considered how much food her dragons and the Unsullied and the Dothraki were going to eat. She doesn't worry about those things her advisors do. Yeah, and that's a big difference. And I think that intimidates her.
You gotta, if you keep up with show continuity, I mean, dang, like the Lords of the North and the Vale were about ready to ditch Jon for Sansa. Like,
right.
Yeah.
So, and it took Sansa, being like, no. so she is pretty powerful. I mean,
yeah. And I think from a practical standpoint, Daenerys hasn't been asked the question because the king in the North is the one who made the deal with her that he would bend the knee and accept her as his queen. If he had asked that question, maybe she would have given it to him. In a different way. You don't think so? Why do you not think so?
I don't think so, because I think the North is too important. I think the North is too important to lose. And more so than that, one thing I don't think anyone that I've heard has really considered is, what is the North going to do when they find out he's a Targaryen?
Yeah.
Because at that point, I don't think they're going to be behind him, because he's not Ned Stark's son. They're going to, I think, fall behind Sansa. And I think Sansa will stay loyal to her brother, or her quote unquote brother, right? What was it really? Her cousin? Her cousin? Yeah. I think she'll stay loyal to him because he's family. But I think the North is too important strategically. I mean, it's why Robert Baratheon went up north to solidify it and get the king's hand from the North. It's why the North was taken by the Boltons. It is the most important kingdom. I'm sorry, it's of the 7 besides, King's Landing. It just is.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. If this wasn't the last season, or if we had 10 episodes, I could almost see a Dance of the Dragons coming into play with Jon and Dany. And you could almost see the potential, again, longer season or more seasons, with those two potentially competing for Sansa's fealty in a way, or the North itself. I'm the rightful queen. Well, actually, I'm half Stark. That's really interesting. And you're right. I mean, the North is such dismissed because they're so different from the rest of the kingdoms. There's not as many of them population wise. They have different customs, whatever. But George, specifically in the books, is making it very clear that the North is very important, both in the histories and lore of the world, but also to the political drama that we're experiencing. So yeah, that's a great point. I wondered, if the romance between Jon and Dany would change Dany's mind, but I think your point about the fact that she's not threatened by Yara, you could also say she could potentially be threatened by Jon. The fact that he holds a title of king in the North, and he's got this large constituency behind him, all of that. So I think that's a good point.
Did you when Sansa brought up Tyrion to Dany? I think she listened. I mean, too.
Yes, she did. Yeah.
I mean, it took Jorah too, but yeah.
Right. I think that combination of Jorah and Sansa, because like Ashley, you said, she's troubled by Sansa. She sees her not as a direct threat, but this kind of overt threat. But I think she also genuinely respects Sansa. And I think that's the thing that just it doesn't frustrate me, but it's just he would set them down and say, "All right, Sansa or Danny, do you know what Sansa went through? Sansa, do you know what Danny went through? You guys could really, talk it out and be great friends." So let's. Anything else on these couple of scenes here?
The call joke was funny. I liked that.
About him being taller.
The taller joke. That was funny. Just wanted to bring that up. I wrote that down in some notes I took. I think that might be it. So,
okay.
That I have.
So I cried a bunch of times, and I'm happy to admit that. But I tell you what, when Davos turned around and that little girl, Shireen 2.0.
That's Shireen Lyanna.
I'm so sad.
Yeah, it was when he saw that little girl, and you're right. Sorry, Brett. I spaced out there on the Lyanna thing. But she wants to fight. Shireen never said something like that, but just her physical look. I mean, it reminded him of Shireen, and I was heartbroken there.
Yeah,
heartbroken. It was a beautiful scene, but it was really sad. But I love that Davos is he's the child. He's the second in command, basically, besides Sansa, to Jon Snow, and he's ladling out food for these people. I love that.
He's the child whisperer. I mean,
he's the child whisperer. Yes, he is.
I mean, the Onion Knight is so great. I mean, he's so great. And I'm so glad you brought up the scene, because one of the things I wrote down in my notes for this scene is what I love the most about this episode is this episode gave us moments with characters like Davos and Gilly being together. Like, when would that have ever happened? I mean, seeing those two characters together in a really honest, natural encounter. I mean, what a wonderful gift that we've been with these people and where they're gathering, and our entire world of Game of Thrones, other than Cersei, is there. And they're all there. And I loved that. It was really moving.
And I like how Gilly was actually like in charge of stuff. Like, she's doing stuff. It's, I don't know. It was really cool. Like,
yeah, I think it's great to see that all of these characters have their part to play, and some of them are playing multiple parts. So let's transition into the War Council scene. I really liked this scene. I got to be honest. The Great Hall stuff at Winterfell has kind of frustrated me over the past couple seasons, just because, and Anthony said this on our last episode, Brett, that a lot of these things that would be discussed and debated would not be happening in front of that many people.
Yeah, no.
And I like that this War Council was kind of a flip on the small council, if you will, from earlier seasons of King's Landing, of Game of Thrones in King's Landing. Talk a little bit about the War Council scene. I mean, it was a short scene. There wasn't a lot of information divulged here, but except the brand thing. I think that was very important.
So I think this goes a lot with what you said, Ashley. It's a goodbye to a lot of these characters, so you don't get these season 7 moments where there's 20 people in a room. You know a lot of these people, and it's just awkward moments, and they're funny, but it's kind of filler, and it just kind of it gets old after like 20 scenes of it. This did not feel like that. It felt like there was important stuff being said, and this is the scene about the brand saying, "I'm the world's memory," right? Which is something new. I mean, we kind of always knew that, but just it being said, and then like it just kind of clicked for me, like, oh, that they're making a big deal about this, like, so apparently death is for forgetting, and like, if I don't know, it's making. I don't know. It just makes a little bit of sense to me. But yeah, I don't know. But yeah.
I mean, I wrote down 3 things from that scene. The first is just a peccadillo. I've never understood on this show the stupid pieces on the board during these war council scenes. Those stupid little pieces representing the Night King. Like there were like 100 of them, and I'm like, what is this even? Like, there's no way for them to even estimate how many men. I think that's so dumb. So first of all, they need better tech. So that was my first issue.
You know what I think? Not to interrupt you, but
no, of course.
I think it's. And I'm like you, the map when they have the wolf and the lion, and that's cooler.
That's badass.
But I think this is a reference to the opening credits, because the Night King, it's like tiles flipping blue as they advance, and so I think that was what they were using in this map. But I agree with you. If you don't sit there and think about it, you're like, what does that even mean? I don't understand what that is.
Someone. I mean, it's just poor people who had to create those props, right? Like, what did you do on Game of Thrones? Well, I made the little strange-looking lemon bar things that represented the Night Kings.
Yeah.
But I wrote that. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, so I think it was more some people let the prop department go too crazy.
Right.
And we're like, well, you made it. So.
Yeah, let's make some stones. But other than that, the other 2 things, the legitimate things I wrote down first, I mean, Theon knows he's going to die. He knows it, and I love that he's come home to die. I think it's beautiful, and so you could see it all over his face, and they all knew it. You saw John's reaction, Sam's reaction, Sansa. They all know he's going to die defending Bran, and I think that it's a wonderful way for him to go out. So that was one thing, and then the other thing is Sam's got that beautiful line of "That's what death is: forgetting and being forgotten." And for me, I know that you guys have your guests planned for the rest of the season, but if I were coming back on, I would say, I told you guys, because I think that's foreshadowing the ending of the entire show, which I've always felt. I felt that in the books, I felt that in the show, that our last shot is going to be Sam writing A Song of Ice and Fire or writing a Game of Thrones, and that this whole time it's been chronicled through his retelling as a maester at the Citadel, as this person. And I think that's such a big flashing red light to us of he's so panicked that they're going to be forgotten, and he's not going to let it happen.
That is a good point. That scene was in there for a reason. I did not pay attention to it. I heard it, but I didn't put that together. And I think you're right. I think that's the way the show's going to end, with him closing the book. So,
and I love that.
Yeah, I do too. And let me go one more and say again, back to Bran, the fact that we don't know how Bran interprets things or relates things, but someone's got to take those things from him and write them down.
Tyrion.
And I wonder if, Sam specifically, we talked about this, Brett, on the Night's Cast, that we were unsure of how Bran was going to end, because one, you can kind of see, is he a magical being, and some of these magical creatures and people are no longer going to be in the world going forward, or does he become like this guardian of the past, this repository of knowledge or whatever? So maybe, again, Sam downloads the information from Bran and shares it in stories or whatever to keep history alive, because we know throughout the books that history is doomed to repeat itself because people forget what happened, that the legends become, that's just a legend. The White Walkers aren't real. No one believes that anymore. That's a very important aspect to A Song of Ice and Fire, that people forget. So I like that. I do like the ending with Sam. I wonder if Bran will have something to play in there.
You guys. Oh, I'm so sorry.
No. Go ahead.
Okay, so you guys don't buy in at all to the theory that Bran is the Night King?
I don't. I wouldn't be surprised by it. One, because I've seen it out there so much, and I think it would depend on how they explain that it he was created and he created the Night King or whatever.
Right?
Yeah, I would want to know a little bit. That's where my sci-fi hat comes on. Where like anytime you get into, I thought the Hodor stuff was really good, and I've seen a lot of people try to explain, well, it happened this way, and I finally just said I don't want to know that, because if I know those details, then it may just screw with me thinking, okay, that's really not plausible. Where I just wanted to kind of be like what's the word that they use in Westworld? Ashley, help me. It starts with an R.
Oh my gosh! If you hadn't asked me, I could have told you. It's the worst.
It's like reverb or something like that.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about.
Of course,
reverberated.
There's something like that.
It's the glitch.
Yeah, it's the glitch that and that's how I describe the Hodor thing. Like, I don't want to know the scientific way this happens.
Well, the Hodor thing makes sense because he's warging into someone else, right? And that's where the Night King theory, and I know we won't get into that here, that's where it loses me with that. Now, I do think it would be interesting if he wargs into the original Night King and something happens there. I think that could be interesting. Or he wargs into the Night King. But I'm concerned about that because the show hasn't really explained his warging, and somebody on Chat on TV said something like, "Oh, well, he used to pretend like he could see through the eyes of animals," and I was like, "Oh my God, y'all! Like, you clearly never read the book." But the Stark children can, some of them can warg. Like, I got very frustrated.
But I don't really. I know a lot of people have a big problem with Bran as the Night King theory, but I don't think that it'll happen. I don't know. But I don't really have a big problem with it either. It just doesn't bother me because time travel's already a thing, and time travel, no matter how well you do it, and I think George does it probably one of the better ways, where you send consciousness through time instead of your body goes back in time. It still has plot holes. Still has a lot of plot holes in it.
Yeah. And
so you can never really do time travel without lots of plot holes. And if you think too hard about it, you're going to ruin the story. So it's just kind of one of those things. Suspension of disbelief. I mean, because you got to think, like, how does obsidian work? I mean, do you just have to touch the dead with it? Do you have to stab a bone? Like, how does... potentially you just have to wipe them with it, like a wipey or something, and it should kill them. I don't think,
right.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, y'all, as long as this show doesn't end with Jon and Dany sharing the Iron Throne with one black-haired baby and one white-haired baby, I will be completely fine.
And I don't think it's ending that way.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's my only issue is if that happens. And I mean, the one thing that we've not dealt with is there's that, I think it's in season 4, while Bran is going north and he sees the shadow pass over King's Landing. A lot of people assume it's Dany and her dragons, but perhaps it's really the Night King and, now his ice dragon with Viserion. And so I think that, there's a lot of stuff that they've given us, the throne room covered in ash. I mean, there's all of these things which we haven't yet unpacked. So I think we've got a while before maybe I don't think Bran's going anywhere quite yet. Whether he is the Night King or not, I don't think he's going anywhere.
I think too. So Dany's already flown over King's Landing to land in the Dragon Pit. So I know that's not really something that anyone brings up because there's probably more to that scene, but it is something I thought about. Like, she's already done that, so it could be one of those things to throw you off.
But what if he's,
because it could be Cersei blowing up King's Landing.
Sure, but what if the Night King is not there right now? What if the Night King is flying to King's Landing while the Battle of Winterfell is happening?
I think that could be a potential.
Because there's no dragons there.
Right.
Why would he go where there's 2 full-grown dragons that have fire that can kill their ice brother? I mean, he's not dumb.
I didn't watch the preview, but I think someone said, I don't know, like Dany was getting on a dragon or something to fight the Night King.
Yeah, there's a brief shot of a dragon, and I couldn't tell if it was Rhaegal or Viserion or
I did because I didn't watch it. So
Yeah, but I mean, but think about it. If you're the Night King, if I'm the Night King, I'm flying myself down there and I'm getting 1,000,000 new recruits for my army. You know, that just makes because then maybe we all think this is the giant battle of Winterfell. And while I believe obviously there's going to be a battle at Winterfell right now, what if this is just a distraction and then he hits them, you know, from both sides, and that's the real battle.
And that could totally, because it could be one of those things where, yeah, this is going to be the biggest battle ever filmed, but they could go south and see it's all been sacked, and so they don't necessarily have to show any more battles like of that size. I think there'll be more fighting, but it's not going to be on that scale.
Right. All right, we've got some really big scenes to get to. I want to get through 3 small scenes. Well, let's discuss them and then move on to these bigger moments. So first of all, we got a really touching moment between Grey Worm and Missandei. Man, I'm really worried about Grey Worm. That's going to be rough, especially with the
I was going to say the racist kids.
Oh yeah, I don't like that. I mean, I get that they're outsiders, but I don't like that because. Well, anyways, I just don't like the way that's shot and the way the people look at them. And
Ned Stark would have hated that. He would have hated that.
He would have.
He would have welcomed Missandei. He would have welcomed Grey Worm. He would have welcomed Daenerys. Like, I mean, Ned would have despised what the North is doing to the outsiders.
Yeah, yeah. They share a great kiss though in that montage. I thought, to me,
the montage with Pod singing.
I want to get to that. I want to close the episode on that. But they have this. I saw someone today on Twitter, maybe it was yesterday or today on Twitter, that Missandei and Grey Worm, they really do have, I think, a great relationship in the show. It's really built nicely. I mean, when they kiss each other, there's a lot of passion there. But I am very worried about Grey Worm.
I am too. I do like how that's totally a show relationship, and like the actors have they really do have a lot of chemistry. I mean, John and Danny sometimes are a bit stale.
Ashley, real quick, Grey Worm and Missandei.
I love them. I mean, I love their characters in the books. I love them in the series. I think the actor who plays Grey Worm is just. He does so much with that furrowed brow. I mean, he's so good. And she's just so beautiful and innocent and kind and just such a wonderful heart of Daenerys's court. You know, I mean, I think she's lovely. And I unfortunately think we very much have a star-crossed lover story on our hands. I think they've been doomed from the beginning, unfortunately, just because of their station. I don't think, and what I mean, because I think Daenerys actually truly adores and loves both of them as family, not as subordinates. And so I don't mean it in that way, but just how dangerous his job is. I mean, it's just, he's always going to be on the front lines. And I will be sad to see him go. If he goes, I'll be sad.
I did like their talk about what happens afterwards.
Right.
Her going to North and him potentially coming with his summon Solid to protect them. So I mean, there could be a happy ending there. I don't know.
I don't think so, y'all. I think that's just Arya had sex. He daydreamed about what their life could have been.
Okay. Yeah, true. I mean, potentially those in Solid would have died once they got to North because of the butterflies and the diseases that,
Yeah, and we're probably getting a horror movie in episode 3. And as we know in 1980s horror movies, once you have sex, you're done. You're done.
You're done.
You're done.
She gave it up and she gave up a life. So,
Ghost. We saw Ghost. Yes. He's back. Even for a brief moment.
And he's beautiful.
He's beautiful. He is a beautiful.
I just assumed he was still at the wall. I mean,
he's that's napping. He's up there napping. Where'd everyone go?
Is it terrible that I'm that person that hopes that Nymeria comes through with her pack of dire wolves?
They have to
do it. Please. I'd be fine with fucking red priests and priestesses riding on them into battle. And I don't care at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. Melisandre comes through.
Yeah. But Ghost was there at a pretty touching little scene where we have three original Night's Watch brothers back together, Sam and John and Dolores Ed, and we got Grin and Pip. It was so touching. I loved that scene. It was a small scene, but it was touching.
I was about to say that too. I was like, I'm glad they brought them up and didn't forget about them. I mean, the Starks kind of forgot about Rickon after the Battle of the Bastards.
Yeah. They didn't forget. No, they didn't forget about him. They've just got bigger issues, right?
Yeah.
And the kid, come on now, he didn't run a serpentine path. I mean, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? He didn't zig, he didn't zag. So.
And then finally, the last little scene I want to talk about is the Mormonts. I like the conversation between Lyanna and Jorah, and I loved that Sam gave Heartsbane to Jorah.
I cried then too.
It's good. It was a great moment.
Jumping back to that last scene, though, something I forgot to mention. Did you see Sam's face when they told him to go to the crypts?
Yeah.
Yes.
But I'm surprised it didn't end the same way as Tyrion. Like, look, we need you for your mind. Go to the crypts, please.
No, it's just because they still don't respect Sam. They just don't. They do as a person, but he's so, I mean, and I love is how honest he is, because he says that basically at the end when he looks at Jorah and he says, I can't lift it above my head. I mean, they're not wrong. So
right.
I mean, I like how he's like, look, guys, like I was the first one to kill a White Walker.
Yeah.
What does he say? Samwell Tarly, slayer of White Walkers and lover of ladies. What better signs do we need that the world's about to end?
Yeah, that was great. That was a great line.
Great.
Like, all right, Dollar said.
So Dollar said. So let's transition into these final big moments. So first, we've got this wonderful drinking before the war scene. Again, a real allusion back to Blackwater. We got Tyrion, Jaime, Brienne, Pod, Tormund, and Davos.
And Battle of the Bastards too, because Tormund did the same thing. He was drinking from that horn he has.
I loved his story about a giant. I
suckling at the teeth of the giant person. And I had no idea where that was going. And when he said that, it was like, what?
Right. And he's telling it to impress Brienne. Like,
right.
It's what I know. A lot of people are bothered by the Brienne stuff, but it's like he is from wildling culture, and they literally steal women. Like, that's what they expect. Like, I do understand it. It's just
and I think I think he respects her. I mean, we're
yeah.
Let's go ahead and talk about this scene as it flows into the next scene. Because when he finds out that Brienne is not a knight, he's flabbergasted. He's like, "You're not a knight? All these other people are knights, and you're not." And I thought the Tormund stuff it verged there for a little bit on kind of hokey, like, oh, okay, they're doing this again. I thought it was done really well, and I thought it was a way to build Brienne up, to kind of make her smile, and that smile that she gives after she's knighted.
I cried.
And breaking news: the title of the episode is "A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms," which I think is a wonderful title.
That's awesome.
A wonderful title. It's awesome. It's so perfect for Brienne. Just the smile that she had, the tears that she had in her eyes, and the fact that Jaime is knighting her. I mean, what a great scene. What a great scene.
Can I ask you guys something about that? What do you think Jaime's real feelings for Brienne are? Because I think he loves her.
I think he totally loves her. I don't know if it's a romantic love or it's one of those things. Like, I would love for it to be that, but then I don't know if that takes away from their relationship. Like, in TV, there's not a lot, and in books and stuff like that. Like, there's not a lot of it always has to be romantic love, and it'd be nice either way, because we're used to it, but it'd be nice if he just respected her as but I don't know. I'd be fine either way.
I think it's all of that. I think that, and it may have been Eliana from Girls Gone Canon, and I regret this because when I read this was several months ago. I thought, okay, I need to copy and paste this because I want to call back to this at some point. But someone in the fandom described the fact that Brienne and Jaime bring the best in each other out. That, she wants to be a knight. She's always wanted to be a knight in title. She's always been a true knight. And I think that that's the great thing that this episode is titled that, based on her ancestor, Sir Duncan the Tall, from the Dunk and Egg novellas. Jaime has always been a knight and is revered, but he hasn't always lived up to those vows. Yet he also shows Brienne that the vows are very hard to hold to when you're presented with a situation where you're tested. You're tested by your family, you're tested by the crown, you're tested by war, you're tested by protecting the innocents, all of these things. And I think that they just make each other, they're almost one human being in a way, the good and the bad of a human being. And I know both have done things, Brienne hasn't, but Jaime has done things that are very questionable, but he's always done them from a standpoint of, like he says in the beginning of this episode, protecting his family. Old Jaime. And we didn't say that when we were talking about him and Bran, but I like the fact that Bran says, I wouldn't be who I am if you hadn't pushed me, and you would still be the same person that you were then had you not pushed me. And I think that's really powerful. So I do think they love each other. I do think they respect each other. I do think they realize that they've learned a lot from each other as well.
I agree with you. I have, up until this point, I have always thought about them as just that respect, that respectful mutual adoration for one, and admiration that they have for one another. But more than that, there were moments in this episode, and Nikolai, he just did such an amazing job as Jaime in this episode, because there were these moments where he looked and it was almost like he could see what his life could have been. Yes. And then he makes that statement to Tyrion. He says, the last time you were here, you were, Tyrion says he was a drunk whoremonger. And then Jaime says, and I was still in love with my sister. And I think that Jaime is beginning to understand that he's wasted. He has grown up having everything and squandered absolutely everything. And you can see that regret. And I think when he looks at Brienne, she's nothing like Cersei. She's not overtly physically attractive. She's not this tiny, beautiful woman that threw herself at him in the way that other women did. He could have had anyone he wanted. And, that the lady from the Sapphire Island, that she is who he should have been with. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading again. Maybe I'm too nostalgic, reading too much into it. But that's what it felt like in some of these longing looks that he gave her across the preparation field in the room. And he knighted her, and that was his gift, because he's never going to marry her. And that was almost like his parting gift legacy for her.
I really like that. I just love, that's a big part of why season 2 is like a fan favorite, is just like those two actors and the way they, and like the way they did all of that. And then, I can't really add on to that, because that was
right. Well, and let me make very clear too, because I don't want this to go out on the air without me saying this. I do think that Gwendolyn Christie is a beautiful woman. I just mean that the way that Brienne is portrayed, she's not portrayed as this tiny, small, dainty woman. But I do think Gwendolyn Christie is an absolutely beautiful woman.
She's not the societal norm.
Right.
But she is a very attractive woman. But that's kind of why I even like Jaime's character a little more in the books too, because he does think about her, and she's like supposed to just be like, she's supposed to like, like, I don't know, like she's just not supposed to be physically attractive, I guess. I don't know. I don't know how to go about saying that.
She's supposed to be long. I mean, look at what Tormund says. Is the big woman still here? Like, she's
but Tormund's into it. Like, yeah.
No. Yeah. I just mean like she's a larger person than most. I mean, than most of these other women are, and
Which is a thing even today. Like, I mean, I think there was something on MTV, like, where it was kind of like an awful show, but like, I think I just saw a preview for it where like, some women that were taller would go meet a guy, and the guy was shorter, and like, he was like, oh, I'm out of here, so that, I mean, that's still a thing today. So I do like that Jaime kind of looks at Cersei and has been like treated like crap by her his entire life, and sees Brienne and is like, this is nothing like Cersei. Like, so he kind of sees past all that.
My husband is 6'3", and his sisters, he's the oldest of 7. His sisters are all like 6 feet tall and taller. I mean, they're just this, I'm 5'2", so I look ridiculous in family pictures. I look like, their child.
I'm 5'5", so,
my husband and I are literally over a foot difference, and, in height difference. But, his sisters have had some serious trouble like dating, because they're these Amazonian, beautiful girls, but they're just, so much taller. And I think she towers over Jaime in those scenes. I mean, she's so much taller than him. And I think it all comes down to, there's that telling line where Jaime says, and I'm paraphrasing here, guys, I apologize, I didn't write this one down, but he basically says to Tyrion that when he confirms that the baby is real, and he says to Tyrion, Cersei has always been good at using the truth to build her lies.
Yes.
And the antithesis of that is Brienne. Brienne builds the truth with her truths.
Yes.
And honor and ability is what I think he finds attractive in her. So,
because Jaime at his core, even though he's done these terrible things, at his core, he always wanted to be a true knight.
Oh, yeah.
But his family always got in the way. His role in the patriarchy always got in the way. All of these things got in the way of him being able to side with what's right. And Brienne brings that out in him. He shows her that you can do this. You can be better than the people who've come before. So Jenny's song. Jenny's song is used so perfectly well. One, because Jenny's song is about her love of Duncan Targaryen, who's the namesake for Sir Duncan the Tall. And it's just this simple, beautiful little song. And the way they used it over the montage, again, Ashley, the way you put it early in this episode, that we get to spend time with these people before what's going to happen next week.
Yes.
I think I could watch that montage again and again and again. We see Sam and Gilly and little Sam in bed. We see Grey Worm and Missandei again kissing. Sansa and Theon sharing a bowl of soup. Gendry and Arya.
Post-coital.
Post-coital. Jorah and the Dothraki marching out and the Unsullied. And obviously Pod and Brienne and Jaime and Tyrion and Davos and Tormund sitting around having a cup of wine, a mug of beer in front of the fire. It's just
sour
what a perfect way. What a perfect way. Yes, sour goat milk. Perfect way to sort of capstone the episode. And Florence Welch, Florence and the Machine, they sang the end credits version of Jenny's song.
Beautiful.
It was really
Oh,
really,
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah.
That is really cool.
Yeah. So I was going to say that, that transitions us into the final scene, or the final sequence of John and Danny in the crypts. And, this is a big moment, but it's almost like it's overshadowed by some of these other huge moments that we got here. But he tells her the truth. And there's such a look of consternation on her face that he is the male heir, the male Targaryen heir to the Iron Throne. And I love the fact that she knew the history of Rhaegar and Lyanna, the story that's told, the rumor that's told. And he corrects her, and you can just see it on her face that she's just realizing what he's saying. Like when he says they had a son. And at that moment, I think she knows what he's getting ready to say. And then obviously that horn interrupts them, and they go out into the battlements, and the army of the dead has arrived. So Ashley, let's talk a little bit about John telling Danny what that means, what your reaction to that was, what your analysis of that is, as we transition toward the end of the podcast here.
I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I got chills when he said my real name is Aegon Targaryen.
Yes.
I mean, we've been waiting as book readers since we all figured it out a long time ago, since the show finally gave it to us. We've been waiting for that moment for John to claim who he is. And I think that I'll say two things. I thought you guys did a great job on last week's podcast about talking about the motivations for why Sam told John when he did and how he did, after finding out what Daenerys had done to his father and to his brother. And I think that despite motivation, no better person could have told John, because John immediately knew it was true. And I think John has always known, as we have too, that there was something off about his father having an affair. There was something off about that, because Ned, it just wasn't in his character. He was such a good man and a loyal man and adored Catelyn. I mean, he adored her. And I think that John has always been seeking the answer to why, and he got it in that moment. And seeing him declare that, there's been a lot of pushback of John by some people, by some viewers, and feeling like John has kind of, he's kind of wishy-washy, and he kind of goes with whatever flow he needs to go with, and isn't the brightest bulb on the tree. But I think in that moment, we see the John of episode 1 of season 6. We see the John where he pulls his sword out and takes that moment and breathes and faces the coming horde and battle of the bastards. We see the John we know, the king that is in him. And beyond that, I know he's not Ned Stark's son, but he is, because he was raised by him. And so we see the Targaryen and we see his father. And it was I got chills right now. I'm so cheesy, y'all. I got big old chills right now. Big old goosies. And it's that moment. And so that's him. And then her face, how disgusted. I mean, because that's what it was. It wasn't shock. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It was disgust. That, why would you do this? Why would you lie about this? And if it is true, do you realize you have undone what my entire life's work is? And I think that moment, that screenshot, there's going to be memes of it.
Yeah.
I think we're seeing a big old showdown that's going to happen.
It's interesting too, because you get kind of, he's already told Theon, you can be a Stark and a
Greyjoy, yeah.
Greyjoy, so he's gonna have to wrestle with that. He's got a dragon now, so it's like, it's kind of, I don't think it's going to end with them fighting or anything. Like, no. I know you didn't mean it that way, yeah. But one thing I did notice, and this is kind of not this, it has to do with this conversation, but it's not really with this. But I something that no one's I haven't heard anyone talk about, but he's Aegon the Sixth, not the Seventh. So potentially in the books, maybe Griff he is going to take the throne, like a lot of fan theories say, making John the Seventh, but they really couldn't do that because you don't really get that title unless you hold the crown for a while. So even though he might be a Black Fire, he might be still crowned as the Sixth.
That's interesting. You're making me want to go get out like a whiteboard and some genealogy charts.
Yeah. It's confusing. It is very confusing because they may not even find out Griff is a fake in the book. Maybe potentially. Because history's told by the victors, but they did crown. Maegor was considered a king, and then Aegon the Second was considered one, even though the blacks still kind of ended up winning. It's very strange. But I get why they did it. It's just it is kind of interesting. John will potentially be the seventh in the books, but he's Aegon the Sixth in the show.
In the show, right?
Interesting.
What I really loved about this scene is the juxtaposition between everyone else and John and Dany in this episode. We talked a little earlier about, Dany, I'm sure, is just looking at herself as an outcast in Winterfell. John is too, though. He doesn't have, other than his reunion with Tormund and Beric and Ed, he doesn't, even though that's a lighthearted moment and a fun moment for him, there's this cloud over him, right? The news that he knows, like from the beginning, we see him storm out of every room because he doesn't want to confront Dany.
Yeah. I know.
She's feeling completely isolated. And, we have gone through these wonderful moments this episode, and their moments are very down and dark. The news is so troubling. The horn blowing is so troubling, but the truth is so troubling as well for them. Man, this just does not bode well for where it's going with them.
I think you bring up a really good point because it's such an interesting and stark contrast to last week. And I will be very honest. I did not enjoy the Westerosi date night that occurred between John and Dany on the dragon ride. But I now understand the necessity of it because we needed that contrast from last week to this week. And also I think that's going to be what sells her on it, is that the dragons aren't afraid of John, that they... Yeah, only a Targaryen can ride a dragon, and that's what the lore says, right? They have fire in their blood. But I do think that is interesting. But, we mentioned at the beginning when we were talking about the rings, and I won't get too much in the weeds on this, because because I know some people aren't book readers, but when I was talking about Azor Ahai and the prince who comes in the legend, he sacrifices his wife. He sacrifices the person he loves the most in order to forge the sword. And I think that Dany and John, it's going to come down to one of them. I think one of them, when she says, "I love your brother," to Sansa, and Sansa says he loves you, I think that love is going to be tested with the ultimate sacrifice. And I don't know who it's going to be, but whether... That's
where I'm at, yeah.
Whether it's the prince or princess, because prince is non-gender specific and they're very clear on that. I think that is going to be what it comes down to. And I would lean toward Dany sacrificing herself. Yeah. I would lean toward that because John, I think, will be the best king because he doesn't want to be. And so he will be the best ruler. But I think we're starting, and when I say we're seeing a battle, I mean a battle of wills and a battle of love and who truly has the people's best interests at heart. I think we're now on our path to that.
You bring up a great point with the line between Sansa and Dany. Dany says, I'm here for Jon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fighting his war.
My king.
I'm fighting his war.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in season 7, and I don't think this is a retcon, if you will. You know, she saw the army of the dead. She knows what's out there. She's agreed to fight. But that was such an interesting turn of words that I'm here for Jon because I love him. I'm here to fight. We're here fighting his war. I don't know if this is just, again, that Dany just feels so isolated right now that, or does she not believe anymore in the justification for what, or is she just so down at the fact that Cersei has betrayed them and she's lost a dragon and all this?
I think it's a Freudian slip. I think it's a Freudian slip. You know, I think, because again, nothing on this show is done without full intentionality, right? And I think that is setting us up. I mean, you bring up a great point because I didn't even think about that. I think that's setting us up for what one of them is going to have to do for the other.
Yeah, because it's kind of, it's her war too. I mean, the Night King took out one of her dragons, so she should be personally invested in it. But I think it's not really a flaw in the writing. It's just her motivations are different.
Right.
But she should. I mean, she should potentially be very upset about that. Like, that's a big asset that was taken. So, I think it's not that the writers forgot, because that is sort of a weird thing, but.
Right.
But you're right, Ashley. Like they don't do anything on accident. I mean, small things, but they do those weird lines that we read and that we pick up on. That's there for a reason. I mean, that was passed around. A lot of people read that before they started, filming and shooting the script. So those little lines are there for a reason.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right, so let's begin wrapping up. I want to ask a few questions. Let's just try to keep these a little brief. We're running a little late here, which is great because I love talking about this. And I've enjoyed the conversation.
I didn't really expect for this episode to be. It's fine that it's so long, but there is a lot of stuff in this. There is
so much material, and I think that we've had such a positive reaction to it. We want to talk about everything that happened. So, Ashley, what was your one favorite moment of the episode?
Brienne being knighted.
Brett?
Oh man, it's a toss up between that and like just Theon making it back to Winterfell and the scenes, the two scenes with Theon and Sansa, and like just Alfie Allen always kills it with his performances, and Sophie Turner she's a great actress too. So I'm just. Yeah, those were good. And then the Jamie stuff, and like just the way it built up, like Tormund doing that weird, he was chugging his drink and it was spilling all over him.
Yeah. And
then it kind of like his facial expressions when all that happened, like that was a great scene. And even him being ridiculous, I don't feel it took away from it. It just made it better because his smile. It was really good. Like. So both of those, I don't know. I can't choose between them.
Yeah, I got to go with Brienne. I think hands down that's the best scene, and that will, I think, be one of the top scenes in the entire show's history as well. Yep. Ashley, did you have a moment that you didn't like?
When it ended. No, I didn't like that. But no, I mean, just what I said earlier, I'll just, reiterate the beginning interaction between Dany and Tyrion. That just frustrated me, and that has been frustrating me since she returned to Meereen in season 6 and was angry, that other than that, I thought this was one of the most flawless episodes they've ever had.
One thing I picked up with that scene when Dany was getting on to Tyrion is she was saying something about like I also liked him for his ruthlessness and blah blah blah. I think that was a hint towards the books of why. I think that was just like a little nod.
Little nugget.
Yeah, and I did like that.
Could be a seed for the future though of the season. Maybe Tyrion takes a ruthless turn. Did you have a moment you didn't like, Brett?
Arya Gendry one, I wasn't sure about. I think y'all kind of pushed me in the direction of like I'm fine with it. It was just kind of a little jarring to see her throwing her clothes off when it's just like I don't know. You've just never seen it before, so it's like wow. Like I didn't think that they would do this.
Yeah.
I think like the scene was fine. It was a little jarring to see it go that far.
Sure,
like it could have been more implied. But I don't know. Like I'm still not fleshed out on how I feel about that. But also the Jaime Brienne, the first one they have where like Brienne's like, "What? Why are you even here?" I mean, they've had conversations where Jaime's not insulting her. That one was kind of. I think it was one of those callback things that like they just expect people to not remember or something, and so that just felt a little out of place. But that's a nitpick. But I think that's about it. Yeah.
Okay. I probably mine is the Northerners looking racistly or however you want to describe it, bigoted toward Missandei and Graham. I just don't like that. I don't know why, but it doesn't do anything anymore. We can move on from that. What surprised you, Ashley? What surprised you the most about the episode?
I'm surprised and pleasantly surprised that they only having 6 episodes that they took the time to do an episode like this.
Yeah,
I didn't expect it, especially after last season. And the jetpacking didn't bother me the way it did other people last season, I'll be honest. Yeah. But I thought we were going to get much of the same this season because of time crunches. And I'm so glad they gave us this episode. And I think after next week, we're going to have to go back and watch this like as like a therapy, like to remember that we had this. And I really think this is going to go down as a lot of people's favorite episodes of the series because it gave us these beautiful moments that they've earned, that we've earned. And I'm pleasantly surprised they took the time to do it.
Brett, what were you most surprised? I'll say mine first. Mine was Tyrion. I was surprised. We talked about this a little earlier. I was surprised how much I enjoy him this episode. Mm-hmm. I thought they're trying to bring that character back a little bit. That might be Brian Cogman, the writer. I think he enjoys Tyrion as a character. So maybe that's him just getting back into the show and enjoying that character. But I think that was what I was most surprised about, that I walked away really liking Tyrion this episode.
I think I was most surprised about the Brienne knighting scene. I mean, I didn't expect that. I feel like we all should have expected it, but it was just one of those things that came out of nowhere, and it not that was a bad thing. It was just great, right. But that was a big surprise for me, and I think that's what I'll have to go with.
Last question: name a character who dies next episode. Ashley.
Theon or Jaime.
Okay. Brett.
Barrick. I think Barrick. Kiss of life. Though. I'm calling it Kiss of life.
Kiss of life. Barrick. I'm gonna go easy here because it's late. I'm just gonna say Grey Worm because unfortunately I think Grey Worm's gonna bite it. All right. Well, this episode is character. Do you all agree? This was character work at its best.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think A Night of the Seven Kingdoms is going to go down as a great episode in the history of the show. Thank you so much to David and Dan and Brian Cogman for giving us this episode. I think, as Ashley perfectly put it, this is what we needed before what we get next week. All right. So we're going to be back next week with episode 3. We'll have a special guest then. Before we close out, Ashley, we want to turn it over to you. We want to talk about your Song of Ice and Fire, something that we do on this podcast to capture stories from the fandom. So first of all, tell us a little bit, how did you get into A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones?
So I'm gonna, wave my geek flag here. In college, I was part of a D&D club, and we played D&D all the time. Hashtag Dungeon Master Forever.
Nice.
And one of the guys that I played D&D with was really, really into George R.R. Martin as a writer, and so that was in 2002. So the year prior. A year prior, A Storm of Swords had come out in 2001, and I started reading. I started at that point, they were still kind of, in chapter, the novellas were still going, like, the stories weren't quite as succinct as some of the books are now, like the volumes of the books now. But that's what I started with, was I started reading and fell in love with the world. I'm a huge Tolkien fan.
Nice.
I was a huge Lord of the Rings fan when I was a little girl. My dad used to read those, starting with The Hobbit all the way through the series. And that was kind of what I grew up on, that in comic books. So this was fantasy is a natural connection for me. So
Great. So you read the books first.
Yes.
Obviously you watched the show when it first aired and have watched it religiously since then.
Oh yeah.
How did you get into the fandom? How did you take to Twitter and talk about Game of Thrones, all that?
I was a big fan of the show, and a lot of us were book readers, and so we started watching. I was in grad school at the time when the show premiered, and so I don't know if any of you have ever been in grad school before, but you have no life, and so your family becomes your fellow co-students, and so we all were big book readers, and we kind of created a watch party group. Again, we played D&D, and we would big connective theme here, and we would watch the show and just obsess over it. And then I've never really been into Twitter until I started co-hosting on the Dana Buckler show, as I became much more into Twitter. But I found the Chat guys. You talked about Chat,
right.
The movie Chat on TV. I found them a couple seasons ago with Game. Well, I guess I don't remember when, but I found them with Game of Thrones on the Throne, and just got really into writing into them and got involved with the Chat universe. And that led me to, keeping up with Twitter and joining kind of that community, which has been nice because my grad school friends don't live here in Houston. So
which episode or season of the show is your favorite and why?
So I think I'm weird in this way, but I love season 6. I think
Interesting.
Yeah, I think season 6 is such a great season just because, I love all of them for the most part, but when I think about the way I guess I judge seasons, it's the most memorable, the moments that my heart stopped and made me gasp. And a lot of it is because I kind of knew what was going to happen through 5 with Jon dying at the end of 5. We all knew that had read through A Dance with Dragons. And so it was an exciting season because it was finally new material of some kind. I felt like a different watcher at that point. And, come on, Battle of the Bastards and the end of the season. There's all of these amazing moments in 6. So I would say 6.
It's a lot of great fan service in 6. I think that's why it's a favorite too for a lot of people, because a lot of people do have that's a lot of people's favorite, and it's one of my favorites too. And it's just a good example of doing fan service in a good way,
Yeah. What about the books in the series? You have a favorite book?
Yeah, Storm of Swords is my favorite book. Come on, it's got the Red Wedding, it's got Mance Rayder, it's got the Battle of Blackwater. We get, we get Ygritte, we get all of that in a Storm of Swords. It is, it's awesome. It's an awesome book.
Right. What about favorite character or storyline or chapter in the books? Do you have a favorite of that?
Yeah. What I did was I split it up in main and secondary, and I want to say my favorite in the book and my favorite in the show, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Portrayed so differently. So main characters, my favorite in the books is Tyrion. My favorite in the show is Sansa. and which wouldn't have been 3 seasons ago, but now it's Sansa. I love Sansa.
Yeah.
Secondary, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I mean, one of the characters that doesn't have their own chapters in the books, right? In the books, my favorite secondary character is Brienne. I love Brienne in the books, and I guess she is actually not really secondary because maybe that's a bad choice, but I love Brienne.
She hasn't been she have chapters in A Storm.
That's what I'm trying to remember.
She doesn't until Feast for Crow.
Exactly. Yeah. But she does eventually have them, but she is more of I call her like a tier 2 character, right?
Sure,
and in the show, it's Tormund. I love Tormund. I just think he's lovely. So.
I follow the actor on Instagram, and he always has like great posts.
Yeah, he's funny.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ashley, for spending your evening with us. This is a late night for all of us, but we're so excited. Episode 2, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, was an amazing episode. We're glad you could join us for this journey. Everyone check Ashley out on Twitter. Check her out on her podcast, The Dana Buckler Show. Ashley, we really appreciate you coming on.
No, thank you guys so much. It was good. I felt like we were just like sitting in my living room chatting. So this has been wonderful. So thank you guys so much for having me on.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on.
All right. Well, that wraps us up. Next week, we got a special guest coming for episode 3. This is going to be the big battle episode. It's going to be It's going to be almost an hour and a half long. This is going to be crazy. Oh my gosh. I can't believe.
This will be after our Con of Thrones experience. So.
Ice and Fire Con.
Or Ice and Fire. Sorry.
Wow. You keep confusing me.
Wow.
It's fine. Yeah. So that'll be a great experience to meet all of the folks from the fandom and really we'll be so charged for episode 3. Well, not that we weren't going to be, but it's going to be a different feeling going into it. So again, we'll have a special guest back with us for episode 3. We thank you all so much for following Planetos Podcast. We hope you continue to listen to us. Send us an email if you have questions. If you picked up on something that we didn't, planetospodcast@gmail.com. Rate us and review us. That always helps us get the word out of the podcast. And again, thank you all so much. We'll see you around Planetos. Good night.